So, how are we doing? I've been doing a decent bit of reading recently, as well as just rereading some of the old stuff that I read a little bit ago, and it kind of sparked some thinking because this time I was taking a lot more time to digest it, because I've had previous goals and stuff to read more, but a lot of it hits to superficial levels of it where I'm just reading to read, but I'm not really reading to absorb it. So more recently, I've been taking the time to reread some of the books that I read in the past. And I did kind of want to create some more longer form content on this channel. So it really opens up a lot of opportunities to collaborate with a lot of people and just actually communicate with them and see their thoughts on things, more of a podcast kind of style of video. So to kick it off for the inaugural one, I've been doing a lot of reading from Ayn Rand recently, including two of her books, one of which is Atlas Shrugged, and another one being Fountainhead. I would pull up Fountainhead, but it's actually on my iPad, and I did the ebook of this one, unless I have it on my bookshelf over there, which I don't really think that I do, from what I can remember. But like I was saying, yes, Fountainhead I do have as a book. It is an ebook, but I am using my iPad today for just kind of some of the notes that I do have conglomerated regarding this, so I can make sure that my thoughts are somewhat structured while I do kind of elaborate and ramble in on them. So Atlas Shrugged was published quite a while ago, from what I can remember. Honestly, I'm not sure when the initial release was, but we will flash that on the screen if we do get it. Actually, we've got another way of doing this. Hey Google, when was Fountainhead published by Ayn Rand?
The date of first publication of the Fountainhead was 1943.
So 1943, and then hey Google, when was Atlas Shrugged published?
The date of first publication of Atlas Shrugged was October 10th, 1957.
Cool, so we're going to be reviewing some books that were actually published about 80 years ago, I believe, if I did that math right. 70 to 80 years ago, because it's 2023, and if those were the 40s and 50s, that would put it around 70 to 80 years ago. So I think that if you look at them through the context of some of the lessons that they actually brought up, you can see a lot of mimicking of the primary, maybe not lessons, but the primary themes of the book being represented in today's society through a lot of different things, because they're exploring a lot of themes of individualism, objectivism, and the government's role in society. And if you're looking at it through a bit of a more modern context, you can kind of see comparisons with a lot of public figures, public companies that are present in today's society and actually get a lot of attention. So I'm interested to kind of talk about how you could see ideas from that long ago still present in today's society. So it kind of shows that she might have been onto something. So if we're going to look at a modern context of individualism, objectivism, and the role of government within society, I think one of the first people that kind of comes up to mind when you look at that context is going to be someone like Elon Musk. Whether you love him or hate him, he does embody a very big entrepreneurial spirit, as well as a push for innovation constantly. And that's kind of mimicked, or it's kind of like a mirroring of Howard Rourke from Fountainhead, where there's a very big similarity or philosophy of self-reliance and limited government finds for just advocates of a free market, which you could see this with companies like SpaceX, where it's embodying Elon's pursuit of wanting to colonize Mars and actually reach for the stars. And a lot of the stuff that they're pushing throughout that, where it's individualism and objectivism. So if you look at kind of the design that SpaceX has taken to their engineering for their spaceships and their space shuttles, it kind of flies in the face of a lot of stuff that was going on. So they've been very heavy into the CAD design process, as well as innovating on a lot of their designs. I don't know if you've seen the design of Starship, but just seeing the stainless steel nature, how long they took to kind of reflect and refine on that one, and how they've had to do a lot of things like switching their welding processes and abilities just to kind of fit the goal of Elon with what he sees from Starship. Or if you're looking at stuff like their reusable rockets through the Falcon launches, where they're looking at changing up from the role and doing what they see as fit, whether or not it's backed by society or it's something that society has had a push for. Granted, there's been a lot of people to actually talk about doing reusable launches, but if you look at SpaceX, they're the only company that has successfully done it so far. Granted, there are companies like Blue Origin and I believe a few others that are starting to get to that point, but no one has done it as repeatedly as SpaceX. No one pushed it as far as SpaceX did from the start, and it's just good to see that. Additionally, there is a very big theme of the notion behind like more individualistic achievements over collective conformity to align with a lot of stuff that society might be pushing and advocating for personal freedom and autonomy in today's world. And again, I feel like a lot of that is mirrored or mimicked kind of by what Elon is pushing for. You know, he pushes a lot for a lot of personal freedom stuff, whether you accept it or not. If you look at his acquisition of Twitter, which is now turned into X.com, you can kind of see that there is a lot more freedom of speech principles on it, whether you like that or not. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with any rulings of that, but Twitter prior to that, there was a lot of accusations of censorship or just political agendas or any agendas being pushed, and just suppressing down stuff that didn't match what they were kind of looking to push. And since that acquisition, there's been still a lot of controversy that just anything can go on. And I think that, you know, they're pushing for personal freedoms and they're doing what they feel personal freedom is. And I think that it is different than a lot of the molds of a lot of other social media companies. But even if you look at personal freedom from just the ability to have mobility, access to internet, access to a lot of things, SpaceX is still doing that. SpaceX is launching Starlink, which has provided internet to 70 countries now or something. And their client list is constantly growing. It's giving the ability for people in more underdeveloped areas to have access to the internet and actually have a lot more personal freedoms, where there isn't the current architecture for their ability to be connected with the world, and that is actually limiting their personal freedoms in my mind. So seeing stuff like Starlink going up and allowing more people to access the amazing tools that we have present to us in the US and other countries, I think is something that is a huge advocacy for personal freedom, and it's good to actually see that going on. As well as there is a big theme of autonomy in today's society. Autonomy is being created in a lot of things through the internet and through a lot of other stuff, which is being pushed for. And it's just making it to where a lot of the things that Musk's companies are pushing for are reflected through a lot of the themes that were present in Fountainhead as well as Atlas Shrugged. So if we want to dive more into kind of how Fountainhead is a reflection of where Elon is at, if you look at Howard Rourke, who's one of the architects that values a lot of individualism, creativity, and integrity over social norms, you can kind of see that in a reflection of at least what Elon pushes for and publicizes through Tesla and SpaceX. There's a lot of similar qualities. Musk has a constant push for pursuit of innovative solutions and resilience against industry and individual skepticism, and his commitment to ambitious projects that kind of mimic Rourke's independent mindset. So if we look at stuff that's recently come out, like the Cybertruck, where there's a lot of skepticism in the industry for, one, can we make a truck that big, that capable to match the power figures? That one, there was a lot of skepticism behind it. but they pushed through it, as well as the like strictly angular design and very flat faces. There was a lot of criticism behind that one where it was, is it achievable? Is it sustainable? They had to go through and make their own, not make their own, but a lot of metallurgy items to kind of create their own stainless steel blend that they were going to use for the skin and the body paneling of the truck. And despite a lot of skepticism where they could have said it was not a sustainable design, by now you've obviously seen leaks of some of the Tesla leaked emails where it was. They wanted to talk about the precision of the panel alignment and the spacings of this, and they were comparing it to if soda can manufacturers and the Legos can do it, then we should be able to do it as well on a mass scale of production, as well as stuff where they were trying to make it bulletproof. They were trying to make it able to be used as a boat for, certain applications. They were trying to make the windows unshatterable, as you could see based on stage. But one of the big things that Elon Musk has gotten a lot of public criticism for is setting a very, very lofty goal and boundary, and then doing as much as they can to try and actually hit that boundary, despite a lot of skepticism or pushback that they might get from a lot of people. There's always been talks of reusable rockets, but no one else was able to kind of make them feasible or make them an actual thing. And if you look at the finances behind it, there's X many launches and X many items that you have to do to actually make it financially feasible in order to achieve reusable rockets being profitable or not losing a ton of money when you're doing this, which is why, Voyager or Discovery, they looked at the ideas of both and they ran a lot of numbers, and it ended up being more cost effective for them to do all of those missions and lose the hardware, or just have the hardware unrecoverable where it sinks into the ocean, instead of trying to create a reusable system. So I think that is something important to just kind of mention and acknowledge, where it's good to still see that there's a lot of people in society where they're constantly pushing out those bounds of what we see as achievable. And I'm not saying that Elon Musk is the only person doing this by any means, but I think that if you look at it on a large scale, it's the most applicable example where a lot of people are going to be familiar with the subject, in this case being Elon, and seeing at the projects that he constantly lofts out there. And there's actually a fairly good track record at being able to, complete or at least get close to the lofty goals set. Because, personally, I am invested and working in the space industry, and it is really refreshing to see the new resurgence of a lot of people pushing for space ventures right now, whether it's Blue Origin, whether it's SpaceX, even NASA to an extent. The Firefly missions just went down for Fly the Lightning, which was launching, I believe it was one of Lockheed Martin's new satellites, and just seeing all of the action within the space industry space, where it kind of feels like a secondary coming of the space race. Granted, this time it's not Russia versus the US. A lot of it's within the US, but there's also a lot of countries and companies pursuing their own space ventures. You got to readjust my notes here. But if you just look at the theme of objectivism through Ayn Rand's books, it's a very big push for the emphasizing of rational self-interest. And I'm trying to think of a good way to kind of explain or push a lot of this, because I don't have a very strong financial background. It is something that I have interest in, but I want to make sure that I get the message across correctly. So Rand has a very big idea, at least it seems, that individuals should act on their own rational self-interest to align with a lot of economic theories and principles promoting minimal government intervention. So a lot of that is mimicked in today's society, where it is hard for a lot of industries or items to actually pursue, grow, and do what they feel is going to be beneficial without government intervention. Because if you look at a lot of the security principles, say, that Apple is pushing, whether it's through their messaging, through how they're designing their own products, through repairability, through a lot of different things, they're doing what their own self-interest is aligning with economic theories, but then due to government intervention, it's preventing a lot of innovation within the space, or it's preventing them from creating the actual products that they want to do. If you look at the European Union or the EU forcing Apple to make it to where their devices are easily serviceable, or kind of a lot of security principles that the EU was looking to get Apple to reverse on, or allow for government intervention into a lot of the security principles that Apple has pushed for a long time. It's weird to think that Apple has been a champion of personal security and a lot of other things. But in a way, I feel like they personally have been. If you look at a track record of Apple letting government entities go through personal information, it's a lot more restricted and protected than it is of a lot of other companies that actually sell a lot of user data and items like that. But if you look at just how much government intervention kind of prevents innovation within the space, or at least the pace of innovation, it's interesting to see that a lot of companies that are being hailed as successes these days are kind of mimicking the self-interest aligning with economic theories, promoting the minimal government intervention. Where if you look at SpaceX and how much they've tried to push a lot of their launches, like if you looked at the, Starship 2, Starship 3 that had launched just a little bit ago, the amount of time that they spent going back and forth with with one of the government entities, I'm not going to do myself dirty by that by trying to figure it out. But if you look at the amount of time that they were just trying to get approval for launch access and the ability to do the launch. Or if you look at even just their Falcon Heavy launches, where it's constantly delayed by trying to get approval for the launches, or Apple being forced to change their designs and their principles and a lot of their security items just to conform with government regulations that don't agree with what the individual or the company is trying to go for. I think that a lot of the ideas are aligning between the two books. Then we can go into the book Atlas Shrugged and switch it up a little bit from Fountainhead, where one of the main characters or the main sayings in the book is, who is John Galt? Or John Galt as being one of the primary characters of the book, which is the epitome of individualism and the rejection of a collective society, where one of the big themes behind the book is entrepreneurs and thinkers who are really pushing for personal reliability and self-reliance. And it's just the people that get stuff done, the doers and the innovators, are representations of John Galt. So you can kind of look at that as companies like Google, companies like Apple, companies like SpaceX, where it started as a small venture driven by the vision to achieve whatever kind of tasks they were doing. In Google's work, it was to organize information, or for SpaceX, it was to do make affordable and reliable launch services and actually help recreate space travel and this push for innovation. For Tesla, where it was to create electric vehicles for a cleaner and safer society, however they want to do it. It was driven by the visions from just a few individuals. And now today, they're some of the top companies in the world, and they're achieving a lot of stuff. And it is kind of depicting and matching a lot of what Ayn Rand was pushing for in this entrepreneurial spirit and the thinkers actually achieving a lot of stuff. Or if you dive into a lot of the success that the companies are getting, it's often hinging on a lot of the innovations that they're able to provide for the space, but it's also mixed with a lot of the determination of the individuals that started and were the grounding roots for the companies. And when you look at it that way, it weren't for so many companies just kind of bootstrapping and fighting their way through a lot of the challenges that they're faced with, then it would be a lot harder to say that they were echoing the theme of achievement and individualism that is brought up through Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged. But just like with a lot of the views towards the companies, it's hard to say that a lot of people will agree with any of Rand's ideas or the company's ideas, their standings, or anything that they do. But I think that it's important to kind of acknowledge both of them as being potentially good for society as a whole, or at least posing benefits to a society, and you can't generalize the companies or the books as being bad for the person or the individual. Like, even then, you could look towards Fountainhead again and how it's mimicked to someone that was generally viewed as good for a lot of the innovations they brought to the space, which you could compare Howard again to Steve Jobs, the co-founder of Apple, where it was commitment to groundbreaking design and pursuit of his own unique visions. You know, if you look at the history of the smartphone, no one else was really doing touchscreens prior to Apple. Like, if you look at the market share leader, it was BlackBerry at the time. And it was the push for more usable screen real estate and actually having a more interactive device. And even if you look at how companies treated them at the time, they didn't think that the innovation in the space was worthwhile. And it took a lot of companies a sizable portion of time to actually be able to produce a competitive smartphone, which caused the demise of companies that were not acknowledging or not ready for groundbreaking changes, groundbreaking designs, and people pursuing their unique visions, whether or not it was commonplace within the industry. I don't even know if that makes sense, but that's kind of how I saw it and felt it, especially watching a lot of documentaries and just information about the growth of Apple, as well as the BlackBerry movie that just recently released, and just comparing with a lot of historical context behind it. You can see that when complacency comes into play, it's difficult for a lot of companies to get into gear or to push for stuff just as fast as they would want to or like for it to happen. And that causes a lot of delay within the industry and a lot of shifting within the industry that is probably for the better. Because without competition within the industry, it's hard for innovation to occur, and it's harder for us as a society and us as a planet to achieve the next step in the upper echelon if there is no competition within the space. That probably sounded really dumb, to be honest. So, I think it's one of the larger items or one of the larger issues that is presented within Atlas Shrugged is the concept of a strike by some of the more productive members of society. And it's the decisions of a few entrepreneurs to move their businesses to more favorable economic conditions. You know, whether it's they're moving their operations to areas with more business-friendly policies. It's the desire for autonomy and resistance against what they perceive to be burdensome regulations. And, okay, I kind of butchered how I presented that, but it is In Atlas Shrugged, it's a lot of the doers and the productive members of society going on strike and kind of just disappearing from society. And if you look at it in today's terms, it's companies relocating themselves to more favorable economic conditions. Take, for example, so many companies leaving California right now and relocating to Nevada, to Texas, to areas that are taxing them a lot less, taxing their employees a lot less, and costing the companies a lot less to be competitive within the space as well as run operations. So I think that is, again, a theme that is always been present throughout a lot of time, where it's just beneficial for companies to keep their own principles in mind and push for moves that make for viable sense for them. You know, it's costing you 50% in taxes as like a rough estimate in California to be able to run your business, but you could be doing the exact same thing in Texas, where it's going to cost you maybe half of that, 25%, 10%, 15%, whatever the number is. I think it's wise for us as a society to kind of both cater to individuals, but also cater to industrial innovation to allow for advancement of a society. And high tax rates are good, but they can provide good, not that they are good. They can provide good in a lot of the stuff that they can provide for, but also a lot of them are poorly managed and poorly used and don't actually create any viable kickback or viable benefit for either individuals or corporations or just larger entities, to where it's hard to say that it's justified for what it is. And not to get political with anything, but that is just my own personal stance with this and how I currently see the industry as a whole. And then you can look at just changes in the industry as a whole. So again, if we throw it back to Elon Musk and his ventures like Tesla, where he's pushing for sustainable energy and electric vehicles that not only challenge a lot of the established industries and a lot of the established design cues or functionality, or a lot of the things that they're doing with like FSD or full self-driving, a lot of their just automation and a lot of their vision. It's a big reflection to a commitment to personal vision. It would be a lot easier for them to just kind of fall in line with the industry and what a lot of companies are doing or struggling to do, but they are pursuing the vision of what they feel is right and going for the best. And you can't say the same with other companies within the space. If you look at companies like Nissan, where they're struggling to find their own niche and their own vision, and it's kind of costing them a lot of market segmenting. Like, look at the Leaf, look at the Rogue, look at just them struggling as a company to kind of make themselves competitive within the space. You could say the same for Honda and Acura for a little bit ago, where they kind of lost that personal vision and now they're back into the personal vision that they were going for. Or just a lot of other companies within the automotive industry. I feel like they lost that personal vision and it cost them a lot of market space or a lot of marketability. And now they're kind of trying to refine or reestablish their own personal visions or their own company visions and pursue different pathways to actually make themselves profitable. But it's reminiscent of the characters within Rand's novels who are defining the societal expectations for the sake of their both ideals and ideas. It would be easy for Elon to just make a rocket company that's doing a lot of the launches, but the capital investment for it is not beneficial. Then they launched Starlink. And with Starlink, they were able to do a lot of the launches in-house through the Falcon systems. And now they're doing Starship, where Starship is potentially going to be just pushing for a lot of innovation within the space, and it's just pushing a lot of the ideas that they felt were right and the ideas that they wanted to pursue, and it's for the benefit of society in the end of day to let it run its course. Then even if you look at stuff like the financial sector with people like Warren Buffett, where they don't totally align with a lot of philosophies brought up through Rand's writings, there is a lot of display of elements through the rational pursuit of self-interest, through Buffett's values for investing approaches, or the characterization of independent thinking and focus on long-term success over short-term success. And even that is mirroring a lot of the decision-making driven by personal self-interest that are promoted throughout Rand's books. Where I think if you look at any sector throughout the industry, you would be able to pinpoint, or if you look at any sector, any aspect of life right now, you might be able to pinpoint a company or an individual that is a reflection of a lot of the lessons through Rand's books. But I think if you just look at the need for individualism, innovation, and rational self-interest, a lot of these are ideas that we need to push for more, or are important for us to be able to keep advancing as an individual and as a society. And it's something that I hope to integrate more into my lifestyle, my pursuits, my interests, and just a lot of stuff that I feel like if I bring it to myself personally, then it's going to be beneficial for society. And I'm going to urge and push for a lot of other people to mimic the same, to pursue individualism, to pursue innovations and whatever they see, and to pursue a lot of rational self-interest for the benefit of society. Because I think that in a lot of ways right now, we've lost our ways, or we're sidetracked on what we should be focused on. So I think by pushing for the benefit of having more of the entrepreneurs, pushing more for the thinkers and the people actually getting stuff done, then it's going to allow us to realign ourselves to the more important aspects of society, or the more important things that we should be pushing for and seeing with time as it develops. But with that being said, welcome to the first of hopefully a series of just a ton of podcasts, whether it's relating to books that I'm reading, interests that I'm having, whether there's more people on board where it's you get to see how certain people tick, how certain people's mindsets are, so maybe you can adapt it into their own self-interest. But I hope you guys had a great time watching. It is Christmas Eve right now, so hope you guys have a happy holidays and a great new year. But let's get after it.